the complete front page of the Dallas Morning News for 1897. And folks, there are 16 stories on that front page. Every single one of them is talking about the silver cigar-shaped object flying through the skies of North Texas in 1897, and 2 or 3 of them even carrying accounts of carrying on a conversation with the crews. One of them, they were told, we come from a secret laboratory in New York, and we were testing this thing out, and it proved so successful, we just started sailing through the countryside. The next thing you knew, we were in Kansas. So we thought we'd come on down to Texas. Another story, they were told, we come from a hidden community at the North Pole, and we have these flying machines. And then in another account at that same period, a track inspector from Fort Worth encountered this silver cigar-shaped object, said there was a crew of uniformed people around it, and he was told, don't say anything about seeing us. We're on a secret mission. We're on our way to bomb Havana. Now, this is especially intriguing to me because this was in the spring of 1897. We didn't get into a war with Spain and Cuba until the spring of 1898, a year later. How did these people know that we were going to be in a war involving Cuba? Teddy Roosevelt and Rough Riders, remember your school? Okay, how did they know? Were they able to look in the time? Did they come from another time? I don't know, but something's very strange there. Okay? Right. Yeah, and all of this occurred before the Wright brothers were. In 1955, Dorothy Kilgallen told us the reality of it in this story that is absolutely legitimate because I copied it out of the files of the Fort Worth Star Telegram. And she said that they come from other planets, and source of my information is a British official of cabinet rank. So they knew way back there that it was all real. Now, what the heck is going on? I missed all my... Anyway, thing kind of out of sequence. Before I get to the moon, let me wrap up on Aurora. So the only arguments they've had against Aurora is that, number one of the people from that time period, Robbie Hansen, said, oh, it was just a hoax. Now, unfortunately, her close friend was Etta Pegues, that was the Star Telegram correspondent in that area. And so through the years, when anybody would contact Star Telegram and say, hey, what about the Aurora spaceship, they would send them to Etta Pegues, and Etta Pegues would tell them it was all just a hoax. And you'll find lots of columns written in the Dallas News and stuff recently in the 70s and the 80s, in the 90s, and they said, oh, it was all just a hoax. And that's all basically because the stringer up there, the correspondent, Etta Pegues, told everybody it was a hoax. And she said this because Etta Pegues, her friend, told her it was a hoax. Well, I went and talked to Robbie Hansen, and her story was that she lived way outside of Aurora and never knew anything happened. Until one day somebody rode by on horseback and told her father about this crash and the little man they buried in the cemetery, and her father laughed and laughed and said, well, that old Judge Proctor, what a joker. So that's her basis for believing it was a hoax. Although by her own story, she had no direct knowledge of it. So you got two people with direct knowledge, two people with indirect knowledge. One said it was a hoax, one said my parents were there, and you had Charlie Stevens who said it actually happened. Okay, and then of course their argument is that Judge Proctor didn't have a windmill, and that it was all a hoax story, and therefore there's no grave in the cemetery. Well, all this got laid to rest last summer. Have any of y'all seen the History Channel special? A bunch of you? Good. Basically, this was aired back, I think, about Christmas time, and then they ran it again just about a week or so ago. They came with a scientific crew to Aurora, and they used ground-penetrating radar, and they found that there is a small grave at the site. Oops, took care of that argument. Then they went and managed to get the owner of the property to let them move the little well house, whereupon they found the footing for the windmill tower, or for the windlass. So that takes care of that argument. In fact, what I understood years ago was that it's true Judge Proctor did not have a windmill, he had a windlass, which is a wooden derrick that normally you could put a windmill on top of the blades, but he didn't have the windmill, but it was a derrick he used for the sump to operate the pump on his well. Okay, so now they proved he did have this tower. It just got misidentified as a windmill instead of a windlass. Okay, but here's the clincher. Back in the 70s, we picked up odd pieces of metal there at the crash site, and a lot of it was very readily identifiable, old pieces of nail, chain, whatever, but then we also found some odd pieces that looked to be like molten aluminum, and we sent it off for study at North Texas, and I usually have, I don't know why these slides are all out of whack. We may get to this. And they, the physics department said some of these pieces were a little unusual, and one was particularly unusual because it was 90% iron, but it had no magnetic properties. But that was about all we had the time and money to do, so we left it at that. Well, what they did last summer is they also found globs, little tiny globs of what appeared to be molten aluminum, buried 6 inches into the ground and into the trees surrounding and into rocks, indicating a tremendous explosion. Okay, and then when they tested the metal, it did prove to be aluminum, but the metallic composition was not the same composition as modern aluminum or any of the aluminum that we know about. If you go back, even in the story in the Dallas News, it said the metal appeared to be some sort of metal kind of like aluminum or silver. Well, so they knew about aluminum in 1897, but it had only been 2 years earlier in 1895 that they'd been able to synthetically make aluminum. Prior to that, a little bit of aluminum cost about the same amount as gold or silver. So although they knew about aluminum, it was not in widespread use in 1897, certainly not in rural Texas. So, as far as I'm concerned, it happened. We had a spaceship crash, and by the way, it's on the Texas State Historical Marker at the Aurora Cemetery. So now let's look at another UFO, unidentified flying object. This one, you've all seen it. It's called the moon. But the moon's a very strange place. We've got the Maria, which they call the seas, which appear to be molten rocks that was thrown up onto the surface and then cooled into what they call the Maria. And that's why when they went to the moon, they were expecting to find volcanic activity, and yet when they get to the moon, we find there is no volcanic activity. It's a dead world. So where did this molten rock come from? We don't know. But at the center of these circular seas, or Maria, are what they call mascons. The mascons are very heavy, dense objects of something that are somehow always at the center of these Maria. Are they some kind of ancient machine that spewed up molten rock on the surface of the moon? We don't know. We don't know what the mascons are. We don't know what the Maria is. The moon is very mysterious. Now here is some figures drawn by early man, similar to the Nazca planes, which you all are probably similar with. And on the moon, we find similar type designs. Okay, now where does that come from? Is it natural? We don't know. But we're not being told either. Always remember, NASA is short for never a straight answer. We also have what's known as the shard photograph from the Lunar Orbiter 111. And this thing juts up off the surface of the moon about a mile. Just like a little spindle or a tower. Is that a microwave tower? Who knows? We don't know, but it's very mysterious. We've got pictures. These are all NASA photographs, by the way. Look at this thing flitting across the surface of the moon. This thing throwing a shadow on the surface of the moon. What is this thing? And here's one jutting out over a crater. All kinds of odd stuff. People have been seeing weird things on the moon for centuries. All the way back into when they first developed telescopes, they were seeing lights moving around on the moon. They were seeing what appeared to be clouds of dust or some sort of particles moving around on the moon. You didn't get taught this in school, though, did you? And we can see in this crater some kind of weird object. Again, we see this long cigar-looking type object sitting in a crater on